What was your bad experience? Story 1. Old dude here. I was young and foolish with alcohol consumption. Ended up blacking out and riding with a friend to get food. When he stopped to get gas, I ended up having to throw up, panicked and couldn't open the door, so I ended up puking all over myself and his car. I felt embarrassed, and while trying to hide what happened, I took off from the car when he went inside the gas station. I stumbled across a highway covered in puke, found my way into a lounge where I was asking for a ride, despite not knowing where we were and not being able to remember my address. Got offered a ride from a guy who took me to his apartment first, and he grabbed a gun. I remember being nervous but confused. We took off. I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Oh, I'm taking you to meet someone." He drives us to a strip club where he pulls me out of the car and says, "Stay in the ground." He goes in and brings like 4 dudes out and says, "There he is." At which point they all discussed me and threw out dollar amounts. I remember thinking, oh, he must be pawning off the right responsibility, and they're debating how much to charge me. We leave again, and he stops at a gas station. He's pumping gas and locks the doors. That made me uneasy, and I quietly unlocked the door and trotted into the gas station. The guy yelled that I needed to get back in the car or he'd me up. I told the cashier, "Hey, I don't know what's happening, but this doesn't feel right and I'm worried." They let me into the employee bathroom and locked the door. The guy proceeded to ransack the store looking for me and fired a shot through the bathroom door. Later, police contacted me and told me he was arrested and gave me warning signs of what to look out for in human trafficking. Long story, could have been worse though. Story 2. In 2015, a Friday evening, I was having a drink with a friend, another regular of the bar I used to go. Later, I had to meet 2 friends to try new bars. The guy I was drinking with was invited to a birthday party of one of our common acquaintance. When that person came in, she invited me to the party, in another bar a few streets away. Sadly, I couldn't accept because I had already another plan with my 2 friends. But I told her we could stop by later. And so we left the bar we were at. I went to meet my friends and they went to the birthday party location. 1h later, we heard fireworks. Unusual in the middle of Paris. Then military everywhere urging every bar and shop to close and keep their clients inside until further notice. It was November 13th. The day later, as the terrorist attack was all over the news, I checked on my friend, the guy I started the evening with. No response to text or Facebook messages. So I went to his work, a restaurant near my place. That's how I learned almost everyone who went to the birthday party were dead. My friend's name was Hyacinth Coma, and I could have been with him. Story 3. When I was 17, I had to drive my parents home from their business Christmas party. The restaurant was 30 minutes away in a city. We lived in the suburbs. I had only been driving a few months, and had never driven so late, on the interstate or in the city, or had ever driven my dad's Porsche. It was nothing like my little VW. My parents were both hammered, but my dad is an alcoholic. I was struggling with directions and getting nervous. I finally get us on the interstate and was talking to myself about the directions. Something I said set my dad off and he starts yelling at me. I'm begging him to shut up so I can focus. My mom is yelling, and all of a sudden my dad reaches from behind my seat and grabs the wheel. We were like the only car out there at 1 a.m. So no one saw us, I guess. But it probably took me 3 minutes to get control of the car. I could barely see. He's jerking the wheel, trying to drive, and screaming at me. I got my shoe caught in the pedals, and I couldn't find the parking brake on the stupid car. Eventually, we wipe out in the middle of the interstate. Dead stop. We hit the cinder block wall. We went across all lanes. I'm surprised we didn't go off the side. My mom finally calmed him down and convinced me to start driving again. We got home and the car was busted. He went to sleep and couldn't remember what happened. He had no idea how the car ended up like that. I lied and told him we drove my mom's SUV. They were both so hammered they didn't remember differently. He's 4.5 sober now. I had to tell him during his R process and he apologized, but he never remembered. He did a lot of scary and traumatic things, but sometimes I still hear the brakes and the screaming when I have nightmares. He would have killed us all, but I was driving. Story 4. I was assaulted by a man I was dating back in 2020. I punched his nose after telling him to stop and yelling at him at least 5 times when he was assaulting me in his apartment. As I'm making my way out, he stuffed his bloody nose with a tissue and then runs up to me, gets me in a near headlock, and drags me toward the bathroom. I heard water running in the tub. I threatened him and said I have people in the building right now and they will take him out. After hearing this, he turned towards the door and threw me naked into the hallway instead. 4 months later, he killed his new girlfriend after gaining her trust enough to be in a relationship and assaulting her too. Story 5. I was almost killed by an elevator malfunction once, but came away completely unharmed. I was in a friend's shitty college apartment building, and a few of us decided to go to the store or something. His apartment was on the 12th floor, so we went to take the elevator, press the button, the doors open. We get in, press ground floor button. The elevator starts going down, but without closing the doors. It stopped with about half the cars above the landing and half of the shaft, so there was space for us to climb out fairly easily. Being dumb, drunk, and 18, we all hopped out to go to the stairs. I was the last one out. I had only cleared the elevator by maybe 2 feet when it kicked in again, and the car went down. The doors never closed. If I'd been in the middle of climbing out when it moved, I'd have absolutely been killed. Then we had to go down a pitch-black stairwell, because the frat bros going down ahead of us broke the lights on each floor in the stairwell. Moral of the story: don't climb out of malfunctioning elevators, people. Story 6. Guy insistently follows me around my neighborhood outside my student accommodation, getting increasingly annoyed when I ignore his attempts to talk to me. Finally I lose it, turn and start screaming at him to and leave me alone once he followed me into a busy shop. He freaks out and scarpers. A week later, same time and place, he starts following me again, asking if I have a boyfriend, if I remember him from last week, why I don't want to be his friend. I dip into the closest shop and start making for the security guard to try and get help. He disappears and I never see him again after that. A few months later a friend sends me an article. Same guy was in court for assaulting 2 other girls from my building. The difference being they didn't cause a scene and tried to be polite to him. I always feel very grateful to my true crime obsession as a teen, and how much that is drummed into you, how these people prey on politeness and most people's unwillingness to make a scene. Story 7. When I was a kid, I was swimming in my uncle's above-ground pool. I decided it would be a good idea to weave in and out of the pool ladder gaps. I got stuck in the ladder underwater. No one was around, and I was struggling to get out. My younger brother came to the pool area at the right time and pulled me out of the ladder. It was a plastic ladder, and my brother sort of broke it to get me out. If he didn't decide to come to the pool, then I would have drowned. I still remember staring at the sky while underwater, unable to free myself before he jumped in. Story 8. Man insisting on giving me a lift when I was a kid, despite me saying no several times. I remember being age 4 and getting lost in a market once, and a man approaching me and trying to convince me to go look for my parents with him in his van. I'm so glad I said no and stood my ground, as otherwise I probably wouldn't be here anymore. A man also tried to pick me up once when I was 11 and in my school uniform. A guy tried to pick me up on my way back home from work at night in my teens, and a guy also stalked me in his car once when I was out jogging at night, in a supposedly safe area in my early 20s. This is on top of multiple other incidents, such as when 2 guys tried to catch me when I was age 10, when my grandfather tried to sexually assault me when I was age 11, a time a guy tried to assault me at work in my teens, to 2 separate drink spiking, and endless times I just generally feel unsafe commuting. I've seen a lot of edgelord guys say stuff like feminism isn't needed in today's society because the laws are equal, and sell stuff like the Meadow movement, one big grab for attention. But I really don't think a lot of guys have any actual clue what it's like to be a girl growing up in society, and how frustrating it is to live with this sense of unsafety, and to always restrict your movements. because society actually isn't safe and the risks and threats are omnipresent and very real. It is also very frustrating because sometimes you can do everything right and yet still have to deal with predators anyway. Story 9. It could have ended with me and my brothers in his van, most likely never seen again in this world. A guy pulled up to our house when no parents were home in a white windowless van. I was the oldest of the 4 brothers at 11. He said he found some bikes that he thought may have been ours. Bike theft was extremely common in the area of California. He was talking to me through my door and wanted me to come and check out the bikes he had. I told him he could just leave the bikes outside, but I was not coming out. When my dad got home, he was super freaked out and called the local PD, who had recently gotten reports of the same dude going to other people's houses, prowling and trying to lure other children outside of the house with the same story. That was the day my dad taught me how to shoot our .45 through a door and kill that if he came back. He told me he was a kid eater, which was a way to make sure I ended him in defense of my brothers, but not give me enough details to sicken. I hope that shithead got caught and didn't hurt any children. Story 10. I grew up on a farm. Growing up, there weren't a lot of rules, but one thing I was told to never do was climb on the stacks of hay bale in the red barn. This all changed one day though when some of the wilder free-range hens decided to start laying eggs in the hay barn. When I first discovered the secret nests, they were full of many months' worth of rancid eggs, but I had to return a number of times to clear nests before I could finally deter the chickens from laying there. And it wasn't long before my curiosity got the better of me, and I started climbing the hay bales to look for more nests. And I found it quite fun. By this point in the season, the huge barn was almost completely filled with large, heavy, rectangular compressed bales of fresh hay stacked on top of each other in an arrangement about 20 or 30 feet tall. Climbing around the bales, I soon invented this hay bale parkour game of jumping from one huge stack to the next. But as I did so on one particular section, the bales began to move and spread in separate directions below my feet, and to my horror, I realized that literally almost the entire 30 feet tall stacks of hay bales I was standing on was about to come down. And these bales are very heavy. They can easily kill a person or ride off a car if they land on one. I have no idea how I quite managed to do it, but during those seconds of absolute chaos, time itself seemed to slow down, and I remember literally jumping from one stack of crashing hay bales to the next as they each came tumbling down in a domino effect. When I landed on the ground, I was moving so fast my feet could barely keep up with me, and I didn't stop until I was in the middle of the yard. I turned around slowly, only to see the entire barn's worth stash of hay bales completely collapsed and many rolled out into the mud. Did I tell my mother about my near escape with a crushing death and the carnage I'd just caused? Hell no. Shaken up as I was, I knew it would be far worse to be on the receiving end of her wrath. But I am honestly astonished at how lucky I got it that day.